Okay, guys, I'm going to get this started here, and I'm really excited about this. A couple of weeks ago, I was speaking with I was looking for a really good guest, and I think what happened. Well, I was looking to do a really good strength and conditioning session. I spent a lot of time in the last couple of months with Dalton Pro doing our workouts and stuff together, and asked him to touch base with one of the strength coaches. So he did, and funny how this happened because with everything going on in the world right now, there's what happens is when there's crisis, there's also opportunity. And I think for hockey players, I know my son's team, a lot of kids are out right now, but my son's team ended their conversation, or the conversation does when they ended their season. It was abrupt and didn't know what to do. But we don't know when we're going to get back on the ice. We just don't know. It could be in 3 weeks, and it could be in 5 months, or it could be in 8 months. We don't know, but there's always something that you can do about it. And for me, the two biggest issues is to definitely to take care of your body, because you never know. And the people that actually take this seriously can get way ahead of other people. So that's an exciting thing. So that's why I'm really excited to have Stephen with us today. And the other thing you could do is obviously something like this. Do something good for your mind, because if you have a good mind and a good body, you're ready to play hockey. So be mentally strong, mentally tough, and physically tough. That's the way to go. So our featured speaker today is Stephen DiLustro. He's a strength and conditioning coach with the San Jose Sharks. And Stephen, when you start this off, can you tell us basically, briefly your education, maybe what got you interested in fitness and being a strength coach, and how you ended up with the San Jose Sharks? Go ahead.
Well, Andy, thanks for having me. I like to tell everybody that my whole career trajectory is just a series of luck for the most part. But to answer your question, as far as my education goes, I got my Bachelor of Science in Exercise Physiology from UMass at Lowell. I went to school thinking or wanting to be a physical therapist, but Lowell does a really good job of weeding people out. And to be honest with you, I am not very good at chemistry. So that's another reason why I'm standing here before you, and I haven't worked in a clinic. And then I did my graduate degree and a graduate assistantship at University of Arizona, where I got my master's degree in teacher and teacher education with a concentration in physical education. So education has kind of always been my passion, and everywhere I've been, I've tried to be on the side of continuing education, or be in charge of some of that professional development stuff. As far as my start goes, I've just always been into fitness. I grew up playing soccer. I grew up running track and field. I played every sport I could, to tell you the truth. Once I got to high school, I kind of gave up on basketball and baseball because I have terrible hand-eye coordination, and it was just soccer and track for me. And I found that, one of my big kind of inspiration in the fitness field is kind of been my uncle. He was an amateur bodybuilder when he was young, and he had this cool little gym he had set up with like a hack squat and a bench press and an incline bench press at my grandmother's house. And me and my cousins would always go down there on Sunday dinner and love to just mess around when everybody else is kind of talking upstairs. And I always felt that when I was doing something physical from a weight room standpoint, it would directly affect my outcome on the field, especially when it came to track and field. And as far as being able to, hey, I could do X amount of lunges, or I could, at the time, leg press, or I could hack squat or leg press X amount, and then I could see it kind of transfer to the field. So that's kind of how I got my start. As far as getting to where I am now, like I said, dumb luck. Got my senior year in undergraduate, we reached out to a physical therapist. Actually, a physical therapist reached out to my advisor and was looking for someone to run or start a physical strength and conditioning program at a local high school. And it just worked out really well for me. Me and a good friend of mine. I'm going to name drop a lot during this because there's been a lot of people that helped me get to where I am. But Chris Boyko and I, who's a strength coach at Amherst College in Massachusetts, we started a strength and conditioning program at a local high school. And it kind of took off and kind of fueled my fire. I did a internship at a health club, and the head trainer there basically said, hey, you know what, you can get paid to do this strength and conditioning stuff. And I was like, how? He said, basically explained to me how graduate assistantships work. So I didn't know anything about the field at the time. I thought I was going to get my master's degree for free and then go work at like the Army Research Center in Natick, Massachusetts or something. But, you know, it just kind of, he just got me into it, and now it's pretty much all I know how to do. That led to working in a private facility, and I sweated down Roger Marandino, who was the head strength coach at Brown University in Rhode Island, and then went on to work with the Colts and now works in the XFL. And I just kind of kept bothering him until he finally gave me an internship at Brown, and that led to meeting Brandon Horrigan, who's at Wake Forest now, and Preston Green, who's at University of Florida basketball. And Preston was responsible for me coming out to, those two responsible for me coming out to University of Arizona as a graduate assistant. And then from there, I met, you know, one of the best strength coaches nobody knows about, Brad Scott, who's been a close confidant, mentor, brother to me my entire career. And then from there, I ended up working with a men's basketball team, or get promoted into a full-time position at University of Arizona, and then going back to Brown again. One of the fun things in this field, I tell everybody, you're not a real college strength coach until you get fired. So I was basically, we had a terrible year at Arizona basketball. I did end up getting fired that year, and then, contract not renewed. So you do the math on that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, Roger brought me back to Brown. I spent 3 years there, and I really started to develop and take a lot more of his life lessons, being a little bit older and learning how to train smarter with our athletes. And then from there, got offered a job at Stanford University out here in California. And that was something, and if it wasn't for Roger telling me you have to take this job, it wasn't a job I was interested in because A, the cost of living, but B, it was working with baseball. And I thought at the time I was going to be a basketball guy. And so with that being said, he strongly encouraged me to come out there, and Brandon Marcello was our director of sports performance then. And that's when my career, or at least my knowledge, really took off, you know, so much more in depth, learning about recovery, learning about long-term athletic development, learning a lot of different things. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but same thing, contract not renewed at Stanford after about 4 or 5 years. Actually, I was almost there 8 years, I think. Anyway, got a chance to go to St. Mary's College in Moraga, California, which is just outside of Oakland. And I got to be the director there for about 2 years. And then Mike Potenza, who I met through Brandon in probably 2010, maybe, who ironically enough, we tell everybody that we graduated the same year he went to Springfield. We graduated the same year. We grew up 10 miles from each other, give or take. He grew up just over the border in Providence, Rhode Island. I grew up in just over the border in Seekonk, Massachusetts. But we have known about each other our entire careers, I think, just because he had, well, one, I knew more about him because he had an incredible trajectory. But two, just being local and in our field being so small, as you probably already know. But I'd helped him with development camps the last couple of years, and his assistant Kevin Neal left to be the director of strength and conditioning at the Boston Bruins, or head of sports performance of the Bruins. And he's like, hey, Kevin's leaving. Would you be interested in this job? And it was an absolute no-brainer for me, because to me, working with someone I respect a lot, working with the type of athletes that we have here, it's just been an incredible experience, and it's been amazing. How much Mike is probably the best teacher I've ever worked with. I've worked with some amazing people, but when you talk about teaching, Mike is amazing at that. So it's been great working under him the last almost 2 years now. So yeah, that's kind of my career trajectory. But like I said, a lot of dumb luck, just knowing the right people at the right time.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned a lot of names that I've read a lot of their stuff. Kind of the discipline I come from, I got a lot of Charles Poliquin. I've studied him to like crazy. I think there's not one article that I haven't read from him. And then a lot of those names that you mentioned, I've at least read some of the stuff. Dan, Boyle, obviously heard of him from out east as well. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this thing. So one thing I want to ask, so there's a lot of buzzwords out there: sports specific training, core training, functional training. I need a personal trainer, and I know that a lot of the times when these things come up, it's they're buzzwords that are good for sales. It could kind of actually make you sound smart, and but what I also notice is that it could actually freeze people or slow people down from actually getting started, or they think they're maybe doing the wrong thing. So like from a real basic perspective, let's say I think we talked about this, that most of the audience for hockey players themselves here are going to be not pros. There's a couple pros in here, but most of them are not pros. So first thing I want to talk about is maybe go into that and just get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as like these buzzwords go, I think that's all great for sales and things like that. But to me, training should be functional. There should be quote unquote core training in everything that we do. But, at the end of the day, are you excited to train? Are you training hard? Are you working hard? Are your athletes getting stronger? Because at the end of the day, that's all we really have. I don't really believe in quote unquote functional training, because all training should be functional. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, totally. Absolutely. Well, you wouldn't want to do something dysfunctional, would you?
No, absolutely. So it's just, I don't know. I get hung up on these buzzwords too. I've been, thankfully I haven't been in the private sector too much in my career because I'm not a very good marketer. I don't know how to market myself apparently. But I think these are more marketing words than not. So like if I'm out there and if I'm looking for a trainer or a private strength coach or anything like that, at the end of the day, I want to look at, are they educated? What are they going to teach? I have 2 young children now, both under 5. What are they going to teach my kid? And how, at the end of the day, how is that teaching going to help my kids? Because you said it yourself, like not everybody's pro. At the end of the day, can these kids move better and they're going to be self-sufficient as they get to be my age in their 40s and 50s and whatnot? Like that's our biggest thing. It's like, I don't know how I have the assumption that Canada's not nearly as bad as America, but we have too many way too sedentary the last 15 years in this country. So what are we going to do? And it really goes down to starting at the entry level. What are we doing with our kids at the entry levels to make them excited to move? To me, the people who are doing all this fitness stuff, you don't very rarely find a 300-pound person who's been sitting at a computer for the last 10 years or having a desk job for the last 10, 15 years of their life say, you know what, like I'm excited about training. I want to go on a 10-mile bike ride every day just because the air makes me feel good. It's like, no, I have to train to lose weight or whatever it might be. It's like, that's the goal, as opposed to being outside or being active is a lifestyle choice. You know what I mean? Does that make sense at all?
I find it the same with my training. If I start, because I used to, I didn't like to stretch and I didn't like to do a lot of mobility stuff, and then it hurt me at the end, but I'm not going to do the things I don't like. So I think for athletes, so taking that, the subject that we're talking about, buzzwords and sports specific and all these things, it's more important to do the first thing, and that's to do the work, do something. So once you do something, you get into a habit, and then you're probably going to try something else because you get into it. So last thing about that little topic there, sports specific. Is there such thing as sports specific training?
In my opinion, and take it for what it's worth, I don't believe in there's sports specific. If you want sports specific, I heard one of my old mentors used to say, play your sport. That's sports specific. Even when I got out to start working with Mike here, I used to think, hey, if you want sports specific, do it through your conditioning. Think about like what the conditioning demands are for a sport, because at the end of the day, we all should be bigger, we all should be stronger, whatever. And everything I've known is the strongest athletes, the ones least likely to be injured. If you believe in Zatsiorsky's work and things like that. But I used to think, hey, our conditioning should mimic our sport. So hypothetically, we should have a 1-to-3 work to rest ratio for hockey because we roll out 4 lines or whatever, and the defenseman might be 1-to-2.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever, I used to think that way, but now I'm starting to even evolve a little bit after talking and learning from Mike and about that might not exactly be right. You have to train all energy systems. You have to train all facets, because if you watch most sports, they use all energy systems throughout, even a hockey shift. They use all energy systems throughout a 45 to 60 second shift, whatever it might be. So as far as sports specific goes, hey, go play your sport. Our job as strength coaches, trainers, what have you, I think our job is to give you guys the tools to play your sport more efficiently, whether it be like, hey, how can I educate you to change direction more efficiently? How can I train you to accelerate more efficiently and get rid of wasted movements, things that might be, or how can I give you the strength or the mobility, whatever it might be, to be more efficient, be more fluid? Because you touched on it too a little bit. At the end of the day, like, if it's not fun, we're not going to do it. So if we can give them the tools to be better at the little things, they'll want to do the little things more often. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's kind of how my mind works, right or wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you're bang on. I mean, as far as the sport specific, I mean, yeah, you go play your sport, but then you imitate what you can, like you try to, like, for me, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. But for me, it's like, if I can work out hard and have to, be out of breath and have to do it again, that mimics somewhat like a shift and playing tired. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Absolutely.
So no, it makes totally sense. It's awesome. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the speed and the explosiveness, you and I talked about the long-term athletic development plan. So I'm a big believer that in both off the ice and on the ice. For example, for me as a hockey trainer, we had a lot of people come up to me and say, okay, my son needs to work on his shot. Let's just say a shot. It's a real simple thing. So before we get a private lesson, what we need to do is we have to do, the kid himself has to do a whole bunch of shots. They have to do it. But then they'll ask questions about, can I work his speed when maybe the kid's 9 years old, and 9 years old, as far as a long-term development plan would look, it doesn't happen. You could do all the work in the world and it's not going to transfer into speed. So that was a long way of saying, in the long-term development plan, it's based on basically your physical age, and you could use another plan if you want to talk about that. Yeah. And then as you're talking about this, one of the big concerns about people lifting weights, like parents have with their children lifting weights, is they're afraid of injuries, breaking ruining their growth plates and stuff. And obviously, if you can do a push-up, you can do a bench press. There's really no difference. And if you're not, and basically, if you're not a complete idiot about working out your 7-year-old, then you're probably going to be safe. But anyways, can you kind of go over the long-term development plan on you don't have to go in real depth, but the importance of, at different stages of your physical age, how it's important to do your training? Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, you're great. You're great. So hopefully I can answer this without being too long-winded. This is always something that's fun for me, because working with NCAA athletes most of my life, or college athletes most of my career, I should say, you get to see kids over 4 to 5 years, and that's interesting. And then, but more importantly, one of the big things is, and this is something I'm very, very fortunate. When I was at Stanford our first year, Brandon Marcello brought out Esteban Baye out to talk about long-term athletic development. As you guys in Canada know, he is the guru when it comes to that sort of thing. He does a lot of stuff for Canada for sport, as far as working on Olympic plans and things like that. And his model is great. And it comes back to getting kids excited about sport training, whatever you want to call it, at an early age. Now, as far as that goes, hopefully I'm answering this right. It was also reinforced too when he brought out Joe Ken and basically said, should an 18-year-old be doing the same training as a 23-year-old, 50-year athlete who's been in your training system for 5 years? And to me, the answer is no. Like, you got to it's like anything else. Training's like anything else. You got to get really good at your fundamentals. But more important, the psychological support is the most important part. Like I said, now that my friends have kids and I'm having kids, that are getting involved in sport. I even have arguments with my wife on this too. It's like, everybody has to be on the same page when it comes to what the goals you're trying to achieve at what age. So with that being said, like I said, you guys have some of the best resources with Canada Sport. And we talk about the physical literacy and things along those lines, and knowing that, the five keys: physical competence, confidence, understanding, motivation, knowledge, are huge for sport. So with that being said, we talk about certain ages, the 7 stages that Istvan talks about is active start, and how important, learning basic movements: sitting, standing, jumping, hopping, twisting, turning, rolling, basic throwing, basic catching, basic kicking, things along those lines. So that's super important to me. That's super important because even with my kid, I joke about it with my wife all the time, how we talk about, like, when he was developing, like, he skipped crawling. He went from like this weird swim move into, like, I don't even know what it was. And then he went to like standing and crawl. I'm like, no, let's get back and crawl. So like, when when I would have to watch him and he would come to work with me, I would literally crawl in front of him and see if he picked it up, because I'm set. I don't know. I'm in my own head where I don't believe in skipping steps when it comes to things like this. So, and that's usually this basic active developed physical ability is usually up until 6 years old with our kids. And then keep in mind with some of this stuff, your kids are going to accelerate faster or slower. Usually up until puberty, girls will develop a little bit quicker than boys in certain things. So, then we talk about the fundamentals, and how the fundamentals is just trying to make fun being the key word. We want to do our ABCs of athleticism: teach them agility, teach them balance, teach them coordination, teach them speed. Basics, okay? ABCs of running, jumping, throwing, whatever it might be. And then start to introduce them into the ethics of sport, and then just basically looking for daily physical activity. And then the next stage is the important one as far as learning to train. And that's usually, I think, age 9 to 12 for boys. I want to say maybe 8 to 11 for girls, maybe. Anyway, so that's looking basic, the same thing, starting to learn basic sports skills, integrated mental, cognitive, emotional development, and then introduction to like different training. Okay. Start training maybe 3 days a week, and then participate in sport 3 days a week, whatever it might be. And there go my kids now. I think my kids are excited that my wife.
Yeah, it's okay.
Story. Anyway, and then as they get a little bit older, we go into what they call training to train. And with that, we're trying to get them, we're trying to get them into start to develop some aerobic strength, some learn how to train with some kind of velocity, then a lot more emotional development, develop mental preparation, introduce maybe a little bit more weight training. And this is a lot of times too with the musculoskeletal stuff. This is usually when the post-puberty, when we can start adding some muscle to the skeletal system, then you can start training, up to 6 days a week, and that complements sport. So, and then later down the line, I think this is 16 plus, and this is where the American high school system is broken, I think. But training to compete, I think for most part, 16 plus should be the time to compete for most of these kids, and compete at a high level. So it's all inspired by Esteban Bae. Again, like I said, Canada for Sport is huge with that stuff. And then, even Greg, I saw a presentation not long ago by Dr. Greg Rose saying how we should focus on different qualities of training at each age group. So, and this is I'm pulling these numbers out of there, trust me. But it might be like 3 to 5. We might be working on balance because the brain is saying our balance system is coming online now. So 3 to 5 might be the best time to do that. And say, you know, the next might be like change of direction. That might be 5 to 7. Pure acceleration might be 7 to 9. It kind of coincides when their brain's ready for it, which makes complete sense to me. And something I always took for granted when I dealt with young athletes and things like that. They just might not have, it's not that they're not mentally, they're just literally mentally not ready because their brain hasn't developed that part of their nervous system yet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, okay, so let's go into the speed and explosiveness, because you know, it's for sure one of the most common questions that I get, and my answer, based on the knowledge that I've always had, is sometimes you're gifted having fast twitch muscle fibers, sometimes you're not. I've always thought to myself, based on some hands-on experience and stuff, is that if you don't have maybe the explosive or the fast twitch, maybe it can be offset by increasing your power or your pure strength. So that was always my theory. So maybe you don't have the quick turnover, but maybe that one hard push makes up for the quick turnover or whatever. So that's the part of it. So I'm going to ask you, can we build speed? Is it a myth that it's genetic or it's not? How do we offset it? And then maybe some tools like, so I mentioned Boyle's work. He talks about the flying 10s and the flying 20s. Don't know if you ever heard that. He says he gets huge results out of 13, 14-year-old kids just doing running, gradually getting up to a 10-meter and 20-meter sprint. So so I'm going to keep in mind here, just going with your long-term development plan, if people get frustrated, because I have my own son, and I knew that, he's born in December, so he's a late birthday. And to me, and he knows it, so I know he's watching this too, so he's not going to be offended when I say this. We know that we're trying to get him more explosive, but I also recognize that he's just turned 14, and maybe as a puberty and as he gets older, it's maybe going to kick in, and then maybe it won't. Maybe it's going to be a lot of work on our end. So that was a long sentence I just gave you. But you go nuts. Go ahead and talk about speed and explosive and what we can do as players, hockey players.
Absolutely. So, we have the running joke that Brandon used to always say, you should have chose your parents better. So I think genetics plays a huge portion of it, but I can also tell you that we can outperform our genetics as well. I'm 100% a believer in that. So going back, same thing, Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zatsiorsky. Basically, strength is the basis of all speed, or power. Yeah, strength is the basis of all speed, I think. With that being said, I think, because at the end of the day, the stronger you are, the faster you'll be, within reason. I'm not saying if you are a muscle up hypertrophy super freak, that you're going to end up being faster. Now, with that being said, for me, it's constantly evolving. Like, I just started listening to a podcast with Joel Smith, and he talks about Adarian Barr and how quick, they talk about speed and running being how quickly we fall more than everything I've learned, how much power, how much force we can put into the ground. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that a little bit. I'm a long way from that, but with that being said, I've always learned, hey, stride length, stride frequency. Keep it simple that way. So how, like you said, stride frequency, how much we can turn over, stride length, how long we can step each time. Now, with that being said, too, I can't remember who said it, but someone said some of the fastest sprinters aren't necessarily the ones who can accelerate the fastest or contract the hardest, their muscles the fastest and the hardest. It's the ones whose muscles can relax the fastest, which I thought was really interesting, but made total sense. It's and it gets back to that efficiency thing. So those are all. So to me, that's also genetic as well. So I don't know. So with that being said, I really believe in the strength component of it, but also being able to do things in the weight room, whether it might be sled drags, whether it might be prowler pushes. I think those have a huge helping component to all this. Being able to do power cleans, knowing, hey, split squats and our unilateral work is important. Bilateral work is huge for me. Two-legged squats, two-legged deadlifts, but to me, I'm not gonna say every workout, but it should be complemented with unilateral work and getting ready, because so much of what we do, I hate to say it is because I've heard it so many times before, I'm sure you've said it so many times before, we do it on one, we do it one foot to another type thing. But to me, it starts with overall strength. How, are you how strong are you in the weight room type thing? And then can we take these little snippets? Can we take and contrast them? So I'm big on doing a ton of contrast work. So, hey, we're going to push the sled for 5 to 10 yards, or drag the sled 5 to 10 yards. And then we're going to sprint 10 to 20 yards, whatever it might be, free sprint. So I want my athletes to always feel light on their feet. So I'm trying to trick their nervous system. Now, it's going to sound very contradictory, but I also want them to understand that the strength component comes in because I want them to put force into the ground, and that's what's propelling them forward. So I hope that those are kind of like my bread and butter, is the sled push, sled pull, on my bread and butter thing, my bread and butter exercises in the weight room, but also making sure it's contrasted. Now, as far as we talk about like some of the results other guys are getting, doing free 20s and flying 10s and 20s, I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. If you're out there stick handling every single day, you're going to get better at stick handling. If you're working on your shot every single day, intelligent, keyword is intelligently here, you're going to get better at it. And then being able to pick up on little cues. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, I go back and I look at my high school videos or pictures. Sorry, I shouldn't say videos. I don't even know if my dad had a video camera, but the pictures my dad took of me running, I was completely backside running. I might as well have been the road runner. My upper body was tilted way forward. My legs were way behind me. I'm like, how did I get any push off? Right. But that was, that was 20 years ago. Anyway, that was a long time ago. And I've been practicing all these front side mechanics that people talk about. And even when I sprint now, I'm still extremely backside mechanic. But because I'm stronger now, I guarantee you, well, not now, but when I was in let's go with my late 20s, early 30s, I was probably faster then because I knew how to put force into the ground and my body was physically developed and physically stronger. So, you can't, if you can still harp on slight mechanic things, just keep in mind, like Nick Winkelman has a great podcast about coaching cues, which I think same thing. He's on the Just Fly Performance, but he talks about just like little things, little cueing, working on these. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but just like anything else, I've always believed this too, and I don't know how you feel about coaching your kid. Just give them one thought type thing to think of for their next rep or in between reps. If I'm squatting, sit into your heels, like super simple. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, like drive down a little bit harder this next one. Or, hey, your left knee needs to come up higher. Whatever it might be. Don't overwhelm our athletes with a lot of different information. Just keep it simple and focus on whatever you think are the basics. So like for me, it's strength, putting force into the ground, and trying to work on front side mechanics. And trying to get that to carry over to the opening. But it's like anything else, like I said, the more we practice it, the better we're going to get at it. You can't expect, and this is a whole different conversation, you can't expect take an 18-year-old athlete or whatever who's been doing something one way for 18 years and expect them to change that overnight. And especially if you think about the grand scheme of things. So like, let's just say same thing, college, 10 years ago for me, thinking I knew everything. Okay, we're going to work on speed. We're going to work on linear speed development with the kids. Okay, how long are you going to work on it for? Well, I'm going to probably spend 15 to 30 minutes on Mondays doing it. Okay, so let's take a look at the grand scheme of things. That's 26 hours per year you're going to work on front side mechanics with a kid. Not going to make a change at all. But if you work, and this is a great thing I got from Mike, if it's important, put in your warm-up type thing. So if you're going to warm up your kids every single day or have them warm up every single day. So anyway, if it's important, you do it every day and they're going to see improvement. Just, you can't expect to see a change, you know, hey, I'm going to do 5x5 power cleans every single Monday and think that the kid's vertical is going to go through the roof, you know, just because of 5x5 power cleans, because you're doing 25 a week for however long your cycle is. It's just a waste of time. So anyway, like I said, do it well and do it often.
Yeah. So, okay. So if we can put that in a nutshell for speed.
Yeah.
Because we're talking hockey players here for speed. If I was a hockey player without having a program written for me, I'm a basic kid. My parents, you know, I'm not getting you a private trainer or anything like that. What can I do? So you're number one, you know, obviously do a lot of leg work, like you're squatting if you can, but more importantly, single leg squats, like split squats and lunges and plyo jumps and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Jumping's
I wouldn't say more important. I would say equally important.
Equally important, sure. Fair enough. And then another thing that they can do is put in like the flying 10s and 20s. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, so I would, my personal preference is to do contrast work with a resisted sled or of some kind. But if we don't have access to a sled, the biggest thing is, if you want to be faster, let's sprint faster every single day. Or if you're on, you know, if you don't have access to a field and you don't have access to ice, let's do quality sprint work on the ice. I mean, Mike takes rubber bands and does resistance work with the guys on the ice, and the guys just drag them around the ice and they do contrast work that way. It's so simple and so effective. You can use a beach towel and pull kids back on the ice. Anyway, sorry. God, sidetrack.
No. That's fantastic. It's okay. So, because this is a big question for people, is how do I get faster? So I just want to hone in on that. So, how often would you recommend? Let's go before someone's a pro. So let's say 13, like basically puberty to 20, would working their legs out 3, 4, 5 times how often would you sprint? Like Boyle's recommendations on the sprints were, I think he said it's twice a week, 6 flying 10s or 6 flying 20s twice a week works. It actually makes someone faster, because too much can be too much sometimes. Yep. So just a general, like, I'm not holding it to it. Like if someone comes back and says, DiLustro told me to run this many times, it didn't work, I'm going to fire him. So just in general. And then the contrast, and then the contrast training, I really like that part. So if you could just put that in a nutshell one more time. Yeah,
absolutely. I think once every 72 hours. How about that? So like if you really tax your nervous system, and it should take your nervous system, they say, about 72 hours to recover, because sprinting to a big portion is nervous system work, high level work. So that's what they say. Yeah. Now you can get around, I think you can get around that a little bit. I think 2 times a week is great. I think 3 times a week is better. But if you focus, and especially you hear what Boyle talks about is 6 type thing. And I think that's not necessarily the magic number, but that's a great reference point. So sometimes you have to focus on quality over quantity. So hypothetically, let's say this, you know, the second time we do our contrast work, the kid's legs aren't moving, the kid's gassed, and he's just going through the motions after his second rep. You cut it right there and you come back again a couple days later and work on it again type thing. Because at the end of the day, quality over quantity. Now,
That's a Charles Poliquin principle for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Someone had some, and I'm sure one of the Russians started it before him too. So I mean, it's just quality. It's like, it's smart, right? It's
For
like,
sure.
hey, like, don't just keep beating a dead horse. I mean, why? What are you going to
Yeah.
get out of it? Or
Well, I
whatever.
think, but I think the hardest part, even for me, I turned 51 the other day. Everyone should be wishing me a happy birthday, but they
Happy
probably won't.
birthday.
Thank you. But even for me, like I've been working on for such a long time, and I still have a hard time getting my head around. Take a day off. Don't go as hard, because it's your mindset is the harder you go, the better you're going to be, right? But it's not
Oh,
necessarily
absolutely, absolutely. And for anybody who has that mindset, read Easy Strength by Dan John. It'll change your world.
Easy Street.
Strength, Easy Strength.
I'm writing that down. Strength,
So,
strength.
yep, Dan
So
John is.
I thought you recommended a Sesame Street book.
No,
Easy
no, I
Street.
might. Shoot, I've been watching so much of that lately. I might have to soon. But
Yeah.
but in all seriousness, like, this is where less is more kind of comes into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other amazing thing. Okay, especially you get, these young men and women who are going through puberty, their recovery rate for the most part is off the charts. They're producing so much testosterone, so much growth hormone, especially in the boys, that you can throw a lot more at them and still be really successful. It's the later part that has to be a little bit more tempered. But so that's why, with that 13 to 20 age group, like I tend to be a little bit more aggressive. But here's one of the things that you and I can relate to that I'm not sure some of the young coaches can be: to trust your coach's eye, right? So if we see something that doesn't look right, we talked about some other stuff before then, have a conversation with them. What's wrong? What's going on here? And find out that, hey, they had a sleepover at a friend's house the night before and they were up playing video games till the wee hours in the morning. So the kid's not recovered. Now it's like, okay, let's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to trash the training session. You can just have to switch on the fly type thing with them. And, instead of working on this high nervous system sprinting stuff or this speed training, like now it's maybe, do some grunt work and do some other stuff that'll help out. Like, let's go through some high knee march mechanics with our sprinters, or let's go through some technical stuff, not necessarily technical stuff, but in between technical and just gutting stuff. Not gutting's not the right word, but let's go through some mindless isn't the right word either, but something that's technical and mindless at the same time for the kids. So you're reinforcing a good pattern that they're very comfortable there, that should be already ingrained in them. You know what I mean?
Could that be jumping? Could that be like a jumping?
It could be jumping, but the idea, that we're not going to get max height out of the kids.
Right.
Or, like the same thing once, coming down to a landing perspective, if they're landing like crap, then their knees are diving in and they can't hold their balance. And it's something that comes very easy to them. It's probably best to move on to something easy, something else. And this is where I would say, hey, body weight circuit type thing, that day. Or sneak something in there that, like I said, looks clean to your coach's eye.
Right on. So I was just thinking here as I was explaining the flying 10s and flying 20s, just for anybody that is actually going, okay, you said it, what the heck does that mean? From my perspective, I've been doing it with my son, and basically we're working up, like we're doing what that means is once you hit the 10, you measure out your 10 or 20 yards, you're working up to speed, and then you're sprinting that for the 10 or 20 yards and going back and repeating 6-7 times. So that'd be the same thing. And I just want to clarify for everybody what you mean by the contrast work. And again, so you're pulling a sled or pushing a sled for a short duration of time, letting her go, and then sprinting for maybe 2-3 times the amount that you just did the grunt work with, right? Okay.
Yeah, so you can go two ways with that. So that's one way to do it. And that's one way we've been doing a lot of that with more of our forwards, or I would do it more with the forwards that way. The other way that I've traditionally done it more with my with basketball and baseball players in the past, and a lot more of the college kids, is sprint 10 yards, push the sled 10 yards, walk back, fully recover, and then sprint 20 yards free. So we're giving the body a chance to calm down. The idea with this is same thing, full recovery. And if you really want to get to the science of it, maybe they should have 3 minutes in between, which in the college setting never worked. But letting them feel fully recovered in between each one is important.
Okay. And now, so just going back to real basics things, we talked about overanalyzing things as well. Most important thing is go out and do it. It doesn't have to be exactly like you said, 3 minutes. Kids go out and try it. Like just go out and give it a shot.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
but know the goal. The biggest thing is for parents and coaches to know the goal. If you're working on sprint work, and I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times before, if you're working on speed work on the ice, all of a sudden it's like go, and then because you might be short on ice time, or because the coach is an old school coach and thinks they have to puke or whatever it might be, it's like, all right, go. And then it's like, instead of resting, like hypothetically, let's say a 1 to 5 rest to work to rest ratio, all of a sudden they're like, all right, skate back, go. All right, skate back, go. It's like, wait a minute, you're defeating the purpose of what we're trying to do here. So that's the biggest thing. The goal has to meet the work being done type thing. So like I said, if you're working on speed work, kids shouldn't feel like they're gonna puke after.
Yeah, for sure. So incorporating the whole body now, like again, some people don't know what a snatch or a clean or different presses are, but so the whole body. I mean, obviously you're okay with people doing the benches and pull ups and pull downs and all that stuff. Do the actual snatch and clean movements create speed or explosiveness, or is that a little bit too complicated when they're too young?
That's a great question. That might be honestly a little too complicated for some of the young age people, but absolutely, I think absolutely it is within reason. So again, going back to one of the great things working for Mike is he definitely lets you make mistakes, but also is definitely there to guide you along the way. But if we look at, the old text and say like there's an optimal speed for the bar to move. Like, so I've been fortunate enough to use tendos throughout my career, and we have the gym aware units that measure the speed of the bar, right? And it's like, I truly believe there's a point of diminishing return when we do snatches and cleans like that. So if a kid really has to, I call it goon it, but muscle the weight up and it moves up, as a professional, as a coach who's been doing this a long time, but the bar should travel at a certain speed, should have that impulse, that snap to it. Those are, the ideal speeds of the bar. When the kid has to that type of thing to get the bar overhead or whatever it might be, then same thing. You're defeating the purpose of the lift. So it shouldn't be max effort cleans to develop speed. It should be like that. It should be that medium level speed, that medium effort. I really think ideally, if you're really trying to develop speed, the difficulty level should be between a 6 and an 8 for cleans and snatches. Like it shouldn't be, it might not be an 8, but it shouldn't be anything over an 8 for sure to get that weight overhead. I don't know if that, but I think if it's anything more than that, I think it's just diminishing return. But at the same time too, it's the technicality of it too. It's like, okay, do I want to spend more time doing this lift for speed, or do I want to spend more time on the front end investing in the technicality to know that 5 years down the road, like this kid can do cleans with his eyes closed on one leg, boxing a kangaroo, because it's so ingrained in them that then you kind of go from there. And I know that's a terrible analogy to use, but whatever. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I think if I dumb down that answer, it would be if a kid, if you train a kid, or like the actual with a bar, a snatch or a clean can be fairly complicated. But if they use it with a dumbbell kettlebell, I mean, I think they can get a little bit better. And if you're just basically saying don't go nuts with it, like make sure you're efficient and quick. Once you get to that point, once you start losing the quickness, down in good shape. True.
Yeah, Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And then what we're
So what
looking
about,
to is
sorry.
the triplet. We're looking for the triple extension that you see. You know, the hips getting through, or the legs coming straight, their knees coming straight, for lack of a better word, and are they getting that push off at the ankle? Everything that carries over to speed and whatnot.
Okay, perfect. Last thing about the speed, would hill running, like spring, speed problems, or is it more of a power thing?
That's a great question. I honestly think it's both, but I love the hill running for the speed part,
Okay.
as far as like helping develop front side mechanic, especially with our athletes. Like you can't run up a hill by just putting your heels to your backside. You have to get that leg out in front and then drive down. And I love the idea of hill running. For speed, but also obviously that power thing, because it really teaches you how to put to me, hill running is one of the best things that teaches how to put force into the ground when we run, because you have to really pick up that foot and put into the ground to get up.
Okay, and this all translated into better, faster skating.
Yes.
So action's getting pretty shitty here. Explosiveness and changing directions is very important in those first steps. So I think that that would be important to understand. That's why you have to do a lot of one-legged stuff as well. You know, like, is there anything you would specifically tell the younger guys to work on as far as explosive first three steps? I know there's the ladder drills, and I don't, I'm not a big, I'm not saying I'm not a big fan, but I think doing the ladders makes you good at doing the ladder. I don't necessarily know if it makes you quicker.
Absolutely.
But of course, if you think differently, tell me.
I agree with you. And I still, we have some veterans who still like bringing out the ladder in the off season, just to kind of get their feet going a little bit. And it's all how you depend on how you work on it. But you touched on it a little bit. As far as first three steps, you got to have that in mind. You got to move those first three steps with intent. But for change of direction work, it comes back, and I'm sure we'll talk about this soon, is the mobility key to it. How can kids drop their hips to get in and out of their turns? Like, it's like anything else. Can you make the movement? Like when we do I watched the combine this year, and the 5-10-5 pro agility, whatever you want to call it. Of the 100 kids that went through that, was probably maybe 10 that efficiently sank their hips, got in and out of their turns, and were able to use their body levers to slow them down, rather than just to fall over at the waist or whatever it might have been. It was wild. So for those young kids, hey, just learn how to do the drills efficiently. Like, even if it means like, hey, start slow with them. Okay, this is the most efficient way. If you're going to your T drill, you sprint in, sink your hips, slide out, stay low on your slides. Everybody's had a coach that says get comfortable being uncomfortable in these low positions, because a lot of kids don't know how to get into those positions yet. So if we can teach them, and we'll get into this later, I'm sure, if we can teach them how to decelerate their body, that's huge. Like, I have a whole series of I call them box jumps, but starting on like a 12-inch box, and start by falling off it. Before, I worked in the private sector for less than 6 months. One of my bosses there came up with some, just, hey, start jump a 12-inch box, and how do you land? Okay, can we land on 2 feet? Okay, once we land on 2 feet, can we land on 1 foot in the right positions? Are we, I say, compressing the spring? Are we compressing the spring to get in those positions, or are we falling at the waist to get in those positions? And once we can compress the spring, we get the athletes to learn how to compress that spring and sink their hips, then we're off and running. Now, same thing, start 2 legs. Can we do it on 2 legs? Great. Can we fall into 1 leg and land in that spring position? Can we fall laterally and land into that, jump off laterally, land in position? Can we jump off laterally and land on 1 leg in those positions? There's a lot of, being able to decelerate your body. It's so, you don't hear enough people talking about it. And I think that's such a huge point. And I think, like, you hear other people like Cal Dietz talk about how important eccentric training is, and how important, things, and that's all learning how to slow your body down efficiently.
Yeah, so I am like I didn't even ask you this question, but for the kids, there's a bunch of these kids out here watching today that work out at a gym. Part of them on my son's team, and they're probably laughing right now because I told them when we're doing our our skater programs, our eccentric training is to really focus on the deceleration, because that's, if you think about that, I'm going down the ice and I'm chasing someone, I have to change directions quick. Decelerating speed, or probably want to say, that's what gives you that. I mean, that's athletic right there. So, or when you're doing a box jump, landing with those heavy feet, it's landing like you're landing on pillows, and that's your deceleration speed, and that's where you're going to build your strength, kids. I've said this a million times to them. So these are details. Like, that's a huge detail. I'm glad that you brought up, because it's like if you do a squat and you just go down real quick and bounce back up, you're not building as much strength as you possibly could. And the decelerating piece is freaking huge. So thank you for touching on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's some people playing a lot of fun games out there, doing a lot of deceleration work. We playing freeze tag. How fun was that when we were kids? And just working on things like that. Like I said, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good games with a lot of young kids that are focusing on that deceleration part. And honestly, like, being able, I used to tell our baseball pitchers, hey, you can only throw the ball as fast as you can and slow your arm down, or at least you only be able to do it a couple times. And it's like that with anything else. Like, you see all hockey skating is the toughest thing on your hips. Our hips are not made to go that way, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm speaking with a limited knowledge base compared to someone like you, and probably some of your players too. But how well can you hold that low position, stay and stop? How well can you efficiently stop without your leg going out to the side or whatever it might be, where you'll be in a vulnerable position? Or how strong are your hips? If you want to get strong, you do your eccentric work, you do your deceleration work, because if not, we're just going to have labral tears and things along those lines. And I don't know, you know where we can go with that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so if you were going to design a program, I mean, we've got strength, we've got condition, so what's the difference between, if you were going to, let's do it this way. If you were going to design a program for a hockey player right now, this is actually the best time to do the hockey over. We got till at least August to design a program. What components, like, how would you periodize this? Would you start with cardio? Would you go with straight strength? Go nuts.
Oh man, this is fun. So this is going to be based off of something one of my old assistants, Max Bayer at St. Mary's College, put together as far as long-term athletic development is. And it's basically get your athletes good with the 4 basic human movements. Well, technically 5. Squat, hinge, push, upper body pull, and then crawl. And at a young age, and it's about getting them efficient in these. So we're going to do body weight squats. We're going to do body weight good mornings. We're going to do a single leg RDL. We're going to do a squat, a sit to stand, which is basically a fancy way of saying one leg squat sitting to a bench. And then if you can't get back up, you control yourself down. If you can't get back up, you stand with 2. Once you can, so it's 1 leg down, 2 legs up. Stuff you've probably seen 1,000 times before. And then work on, once they're proficient there, then do a single leg squat to a bench before we do a single leg squat. But with that being said, can we do, lateral walking lunges, 1 leg glute bridges, 1 leg hip thrusts. And then from the upper body standpoint, push-ups, inverted rows, and then, different variations of crawling. So it starts there, and it's high volume, because at a young age, we're teaching the kids how to be proficient. And to me, the only way to be proficient is to keep practicing for it. So it might be literally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do the same workout for at least 4 weeks, or until they can, quote unquote, test out of it. So it might be body weight squat with an inverted row, single leg squat with a push up, and then good, mix in the good morning there, or mix in the single leg RDL there. And then, we can teach planks, side planks, all that stuff. Once we're efficient there. So now, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to do everything for 4 weeks at a time, I'm going to do, in a perfect world, granted, perfect world, I'm going to do this until my athlete can test out of it. So once they can do, say, 15 single leg squats to a bench each leg, once they can do 20 body weight squats and it looks pretty good to your coaching eye and there's no knee collapse on the squat or whatever it might be, let's move them on to the next thing. And the next thing is going to be a goblet squat, a kettlebell hip hinge, a kettlebell deadlift, a kettlebell one leg RDL. And then for the upper body, we can start one arm bench, one arm rows. And then we can, same thing, we can start, this is where I would start integrating some of the loaded carries, single leg, like, what do you want, suitcase carries, whatever you want to call it. Yep. Same thing. Once they can test out of that, if they can do a set of 20, if they can do a set of 20 goblet squat at, say, 35% of their body weight, okay, let's move them on to the next thing. And then from there, we'll go into more traditional strength training with front squats, trap bar deadlifts. We can do split squats, variations, and then we can start introducing bar presses, bar bent over rows, and things along those lines. So, and I would, like I said, I would do a lot of volume. Like the body weight stuff, I would get up to 20. The bar stuff, I would get up to sets of 10. Now, all the while, if you're comfortable coaching this stuff, we can take a dowel and start taking them through different progressions for a hang clean, power clean, hang snatch, whatever your preference is. So let them test out of everything instead of saying, I'm going to stay in this phase for 4 weeks. Because you know what? You're going to have some kids on your son's team that are going to be super physically developed and high weight room IQ, for lack of a better word, that can probably front squat tomorrow. Yeah. And then you're going to have some other kids that are probably, let's call them baby giraffes, and they might even be your son's goalie. They might have to stay in that single leg squat for 6-8 weeks. But what we're doing then, this goes back to the long-term stuff. We're giving them the tools to be successful later. If you're 13, 14, 15, my job is just to get you proficient in the weight room. If you're 16, 17, 18, now let's start to get stronger. But am I muted? Can you hear me?
No, you're good. No, you're good. You're good.
All right, it said mute on my screen. I apologize. But
no, you're good.
With that being said, then we can't. It goes back to my son too. We can't skip any steps. If you can't single leg squat without your knee dive and weigh in, why am I going to load that? A great friend of mine used to always say, you never load dysfunction, which, let's be honest, as fitness professionals, can't always happen. We might want to find some ways around that. Now, with that being said, there's still a huge need, for different corrective work. This one leg hip thrust, one leg glute bridge, all that stuff is very important for athletes, keeping our athletes mobile. That's all important because it all helps you get in the right position to be for whatever it might be. Like, I'll still spend a lot of time doing hip flexor stretches on my front squat day, even between sets of front squat, because for me, it's important for them to be in the right positions for that front squat. If their body is lean way over for their front squat, you and I both know, and they'll figure out really fast, there's a lot of stress on their low back. And I can't load that properly if I'm, I'll have other exercises to do that, but I have to give them the tools to succeed. And if I'm ignoring the fact that they're tipped way over when they front squat, back squat, whatever it might be, and all they're doing is putting stress, like if this is their hip, putting stress through their low back, they're never going to be successful in the weight room, So, there's got to be rhyme. There's got to be rhyme to your reason. You also have to know in your mind's eye what you need to see out of your athlete, and then have a backup plan for, okay, I don't see this. What am I going to go to? Like from what I hear, some of the best coaches have the exercise, 2 regressions for it, and 2 progressions for each exercise, to know that, you know, Johnny can't single leg squat. Okay, we're gonna single leg squat to a bench and come up with 2. Or hey, we're just gonna stay with a body weight squat. You know, Jack, he can single leg squat. He can single leg squat with everybody. So okay, we're gonna teach him how to pistol squat with weight. All right, we're gonna put a weight vest on him and pistol squat. So knowing that lead up is important, I think. And then we can go to any kind of traditional. And for me, traditional weight training, I really like using the tier system by Joe Ken. It takes a lot of good principles as far as high-low, like not really taxing the kid, but still touching on all the strength qualities in one workout. I thought that was really impressive. And that's how, you know, I'll train a majority of my athletes when I get the chance. You want me to keep going with the weight stuff or
no, no. I wanted to ask you about I wanted to ask you about the cardio stuff.
Okay.
You know, there's the basically. I used to have a gym with a good friend of mine who won a bronze in the Seoul Olympics in the decathlon. His name's Dave Steen, and he was saying that you, as a hockey player, shouldn't do an exercise that an 80-year-old grandmother could do. So we were like cardio, like doing long runs and stuff like that is not obviously beneficial to being a hockey player. But and that's probably mostly true. So how does a hockey player build cardio, or is it just mostly high intensity intervals and recovery that way, in your opinion?
That kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. They use all energy systems when they're on the ice. So I think it's important, if you have a good off season, I really think that you should have an aerobic base phase to your system, whether it be like, hey, like you say, long run, get on a bike, go for a long ride, or, you know, you can work on, like one of the things Mike does with our guys, he has cardiac output circuits where basically we put a heart rate monitor on them, know their max heart rate, and we keep them under 80% of their max heart rate. If they get too high, we slow them down a little bit. If they get too low, we pick up the pace a little bit. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on a traditional cardio piece. But like I said, if you have a good off season, same thing. You got to pick and choose what's important. To me, if you have a good long off season, like unfortunately it looks like we're going to have this year, you should spend time in an aerobic base, and you should dedicate, whether it be 4 to 6 weeks in each phase, aerobic, anaerobic work, whatever it might be, and then high intensity intervals. And then as you get closer to when your guys are going to return to the ice, so a lot of our guys return to the ice August 1st or August 15th, I can't remember, but then start blending it together. So now it starts to, for lack of a better word, look like a skating session, in the sense that, hey, like we're gonna, you know, we'll do aerobic work one day, we'll do anaerobic work the next day, we'll do alactic work another day, type thing. So, but until then, like I would dedicate a little bit to each one if you have a long off season. If you don't, I would take the individual and kind of work on that. So, you know, we know a mutual athlete, hypothetically, let's say his anaerobic power is off the charts, but his VO2 max is really low. Like I might have him spend a little bit more time in his doing aerobic work in a short summer, and then start to reintroduce the anaerobic power a little bit later, because, you know, we know he's already good at that type thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. One of the things that I wanted to go over is just for the younger guys, how critical is the stretching and the mobility component? Because I mean, I neglected that my whole life and I paid a price for it. I'm starting to get into it now. How important is that, like, to be flexible?
I'm in the same boat you are. I hate stretching. I still hate stretching,
it
but it's huge. and especially for hockey players and baseball catchers, and honestly, some of your longer basketball players, because to get in the positions they have to be in, it puts a ton of stress on their hips. And to be able to have good hip mobility is going to be key to is important to their longevity. Strength is the big piece, but you have to keep doing that. So like, case in point, take for instance a 1 hour practice. How many strides are you going to make in 1 hour? Now, if your hip's in a bad place and you're making that stride, all you're going to do is keep pushing that hip into a bad place. And sooner or later, if you want to use an analogy, the tread on one tire is going to get worn out and the other tire has to do twice as much work, or at some point it's going to go flat. So that's your injury when the tire goes flat. If we can have that tire moving smoothly, where it's not ripping through a lot of extra tread, then we're going to have a little bit longer career. So to say that it's important is an understatement. It's super important, especially for hockey players. And the other thing is they're one side dominant too. Like, you shoot from one side majority. Yeah. And it's important for you to keep mobility on both sides, because hypothetically, if you see a hockey player with an oblique injury, I'm going to show you a hockey player that needs to be stretched in his upper back, because they keep shooting from one side only. So, and it'll help with a lot of the long day-to-day stuff.
Do you have any resources that you would suggest for, because I'll tell you what, I've been putting in, actually Dalton Prout, one of your guys, we were trading when he was here working with me. We were trading some of our workouts.
Yep.
So he took me through it was like a high intensity, probably one of yours, a high intensity mobility workout.
Yep.
And it was something that I'd never done it before. And it was hard, but it was like, at the end of it, I felt fantastic. My body was like, wow. So I've been incorporating that a couple times a week and just spending more time in my stretching over the last 2 months. And one of the guys that works for me walked in the other day, and I was doing, the greatest stretch in the world. And he goes, "Andy, you're limber." It actually works. So the reward for doing it, you don't even have to put that much time in. It's amazing. So do you have just a couple resources that someone could look at and just spend 5-10 minutes a day, because it actually works?
Yeah. I get all my stuff. I got the Supple Leopard book by Dr. Kelly Starrett and his Mobility Wad website. That's huge. And then the thing that really put on really was a light bulb moment for me was when I did the FRC course with Dr. Andrea Spina, and his warm up, some of his stuff was just really important for me. So I'm not sure if he puts I'm sure he puts a lot of content on social media or whatever it is, but those two guys. But the Mobility Wad one is probably our go-to, and with him being in the Bay Area too, I've been able to meet Dr. Starrett once or twice now, or be at conferences he spoke at. So, and his book, his second edition of the Supple Leopard book, is pretty straightforward on the mobility drills and whatnot. So that's my number one resource, with Dr. Spina being my second.
Okay, that's cool. I'm going to ask you to touch on one more thing, and then I'm going to give you 2 questions from the audience that are out here.
Okay.
So a little bit on nutrition. Now, nutrition is a tricky one, because we talked about it earlier, the podcast, or the webinar, how it's emotional. It's hard to believe. But as far as a hockey player, can you explain the importance of proper eating? And just, let's not dial it into here's exactly what you eat, but just the importance of it and what players should be looking at, from hydration to food. Go ahead.
God, that's the hard one. Okay. So
I know.
The easy way, I say, hey, your food is your energy. So you guys are all high-level Italian sports cars. You guys are all Ferraris. Do you want to put that 85 octane into your car, or do you want to put that 94 octane into your car? So if we can start with that analogy, hopefully the kids can start making better choices. Hydration. I'll start with that. I'll get to hydration first, though. Hydration is a lot easier to deal with.
Sure.
We have a scale in our locker room. We weigh ourselves before and after. We want to make sure that we're drinking plenty of water after to replace whatever water weight we lose throughout a practice or a game. And God, you can probably help me out here. I forget what it's like 1 cup for every half pound. I can't remember of water.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
you know it better than I do.
Nice.
But we'll use hydration drinks in between periods that are high in sodium to help the kids, to help our guys have more sodium. But so that part's easy. And then obviously the color of your urine's the easiest way to see if you're hydrated or not. Hopefully it's that, that lime yellow and not that mustard yellow. So the other thing is too is to hydrate beforehand, before you're actually thirsty, because you remember our body can be reflexive. So by the time your body tells you you're thirsty, it's because you're already dehydrated. So that's kind of my 2 cents on hydration. As far as nutrition goes, hey, can you make your dish as colorful as possible every time you eat? Is there something green on your plate? Is there something, one of the biggest things I've probably taken from that precision nutrition is, can you get multiple servings of vegetables per day? I'm not going to say I hit his by any means. Can you get that's huge. And then, like I said, I like dividing my plate into thirds, where 1/3 is vegetable, 1/3 is a protein source, 1/3 is a complex carbohydrate source, not a sugar source. Complex carbohydrates being rice, pasta, quinoa, things along those lines. Couscous, we're getting into a little bit more here with the kids, and so I try to keep it as simple as possible. And then, hey, like watch your weight. Are you gaining weight? And do you not want to be gaining weight? Okay, you probably should back off the portion size. Are you not gaining weight and losing weight and you need to be gaining weight? Okay, we can increase the portion size and even start incorporating all athletes, I think, should have a post-workout drink that has at least 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio post-workout. If it has a little bit more protein, hey, great. But you still need that. You can't have a protein-only drink post-workout, because you need those carbohydrates to replenish your muscle fuel, your muscle glycogen that you lost throughout your workout. So that's my quick and dirty on nutrition. I can get into a little bit more if you want to hear something in particular.
Yeah, no, for me, it's a tough one, because kids are kids, and sometimes parents don't eat that well, so the kids don't know the difference.
Yeah.
And it bothers me a lot, because outside of hockey, there's a lot of unfit people. I'm not just saying even within hockey, but like the world is fairly unfit and bad habits. So I just really, because we took that same course, that precision nutrition course, and it was really it was a good eye opener in a lot of ways. I loved it, but basically one of the things I got out of that is, obviously, if it comes in a package, you probably don't eat it. And the Gatorades and all these things, like, there's a time and a place for them, but I think I want kids to be aware, because you feel better. You feel better. So I guess one of the things we could always say is, like, the first, we were talking about that earlier, is it's emotional, right? If before you eat, is you actually ask yourself, why are you eating? You're gonna recognize that you have habits. You could be tired, you could be bored, or you're legit hungry. So I think that's fairly important. So
yeah, I had
no, you don't have to add, but feel free.
No, you touched on something pretty good. We used to have someone used to always say, have a plan before you walk into the dining hall with our college kids, to know that, okay, like, I had a light practice today, I should be focused more on leafy greens. And if you have a plan, or if you can plan, this is so much easier said than done. But if you can have a plan ahead of time, know that tomorrow my day is going to be, I'm going to wake up hopefully around between 8 and 9, and I'm going to have this for breakfast, and I'm going to try to train at 10:30. And after I'm done training, I'm going to have this. And then my lunch is going to be at 1, and whatever it might be. If you can have that mapped out ahead of time, that's only going to help you. Same thing with you kids too. So instead of being reactive about what's put in front of you, You can be a little bit more proactive about what you're going to choose type thing.
Yeah. I'm going to go to a question here.
Sweet.
How do you turn a set of feet that walk around the house like a Clydesdale into a Ben Johnson? And then his son Ronan asked, was wondering, do you think it's better for gaining, what do you think is better for gaining speed, running stairs or running hills? So that's a 13-year-old boy asking that question.
I like those both. I like those both a lot. As far as the Clydesdale goes, I'm a big believer in jumping rope and moving with intent and teaching the kids to be lighter on their feet. I wish there's some secret sauce to it. I really don't think there is. Just, hey, let's, we used to do jumping jacks as kids. I mean, how many kids know how to do jumping jacks now? But jump rope is my go-to when you want to talk about foot quickness. I like doing little things like, honestly, like jumping jacks and like little quick foot hops, back and forth over a line, or line hops, whatever you want to call them. But jump rope is always going to be a stable, one of my keys. Now, as far as running the stairs or the hills, honestly, I think the hills are better, because sometimes and if you can find ideally a 30-degree hill, 30 to 45 degrees, I think that would be better. Just because, to me, sometimes the stairs are a little too steep depending on where you go, and then we get a little carried away with the stairs as well. Whereas, hey, you can say, hey, I'm going to run 20 yards up this hill. And that's a hard thing to find, a 20-yard hill. But I'm going to run 20 yards down up this hill, control myself down, and then I'm off and running. Plus, I like the idea of being on grass wherever possible too. You can do that barefoot, but I just like the feel of grass under my feet for joints. I know, so that's just personal preference.
Yeah, that's a great answer with the skipping or jump rope. One of the things, so I'll add to that if that's okay. When I tell my kids when we do a lot of the warm-ups, is athletic people are able to do things off the balls of their feet. So when you're doing your high knees and whatever, you're just doing rotations with your shoulders stuff, if you can learn how to bounce off the balls of your feet, great. And that's where boxing, we don't have to box to become meatheads or to go on the ice and fight or whatever. Boxing's so good if you learn how to box, because you get on the balls of your feet and you're bouncing around, you add that quickness. So I would add that piece to it. So I love that answer. Stephen, that was fantastic.
I love the boxing too. It's great.
Yeah, I know. It's just, that's why, this is the thing, right? This is why, success leaves clues, right? That's one of Charles Poliquin's big statements, is success leaves clues. When as hockey players, and I'm talking to my younger audience here, as hockey players, if we just wake up and just do what we do, and we don't take the time to log into something like this, to hear from a professional that teaches professionals, or open up a book to learn something, then you know what, life's pretty hard, but we have so many avenues to make ourselves better and learn. And that's why, just talking like this, I'm going to walk out of here today and I'm going to be, I'm going to be taking notes, and I'm going to be so fired up, because I learned a ton myself, even though I'm in this business all the time. So
I'm glad.
I'm going to pull out another question here. I got two left. There's one, what do you think of static training for young athletes? So I know this person, his son's, I think probably 10 or 11. And then the next one is, I've got a wrestler that's watching this. How about speed for combat sports? I don't know if you can answer that. So static training for young athletes, what do you think? And then how about speed for combat sports?
Static training, what I would call isometric training?
That's what you would call it, yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's a great way to, end the workout. It's something I kind of never really put much thought into until I got to work for Mike and start learning from him and the people he's learned from too. But being able to hold those positions is important, especially hockey players too, because being in your skating position is such a static position that to me, it's very important for you guys to be strong in those positions, obviously for the physicality of the sport, but also for skating efficiently. in my experience, the longer you can stay in that low position, the more efficient and more powerful you're going to be with every stride you take. So if you want to speak more to that, you can. But we'll do, even with our pros, we'll work them up to 3-minute static holds in a split squat, push-up hold. I'm trying to think. There's 1 or 2 more that we'll do with the guys, but we'll work them up all summer. We'll start at 30 seconds week 1 of the summer and try to build it up to 3 minutes by like week 12 type thing. And then
that's
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. I cut you off. I thought you were done.
I was done with that. I was going to talk about the speed component that I don't know hardly.
Okay, so I will jump into this static thing. The bottom line, like that's another way of building muscle, right? Is a lot of people think that they've got rep ranges. Like, so in theory and on paper, if you want to gain muscle, like get hypertrophy, you're going to do reps between 8 and 12. If you want to build endurance, it's 12 or more. If you want to build speed and strength, it's less on paper. But it doesn't really apply if you're just busting through if you're trying to get size or strength, and you're just busting through without any eccentric, right? So the static training is also another way of saying time under tension. So you're still putting muscle time under tension, which is important as well. So it kind of, I think it goes back to what we were saying probably earlier, is that if you're doing something, it's going to benefit you, period, right?
Yeah, speed for combat sports. I think it's very important because there's that attack factor to it. As far as how to train it, the small portion of time I worked with wrestlers, we just did different variations of plyometrics and jumps in different planes. So I think plyometrics are huge for wrestlers, and then just being super creative with it as far as like knowing that, you know, a wrestler's more in that crouch position. Can we start in a low crouch to a long jump, or a low crouch to a 45-degree jump, whatever it might be. Those would be some of the ways I would kind of go about training speed. And then also same thing, it's intent. The kids can't just go through the motions. They gotta physically move with intent.
Awesome. I've enjoyed this like you wouldn't believe. I hope my
I'm
customers.
glad.
I'm looking at. No, really, dude, it's fantastic. And I knew first time we talked, I knew it was gonna be a great talk. The numbers on the participants, I think it might have dropped 3 or 4, and that's just probably because they had something to do. It was fantastic. I would love to have you on again at some point, and maybe we'll just dial into one crazy thing, and we'll talk
absolutely.
about that.
Absolutely. I can be
before we shut it down. I'm gonna get. No, it's good. It's good, man. It was awesome. But if is there anything else that you would like to add to this, or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go.
Encouraging?
I just want, hopefully everybody stays safe through these trying times, and hopefully you can all play it forward, whether it be professionally or just people around you. Just take care of the people around you, and like I said, pay it forward. One of the things I'm very thankful of is a lot of mentors that have brought me to where I am, and just being able to sit around, talk like this, and just share ideas is very important for us as our professionalism. But as far as what's going on in the world around us, just take care of those around you as best you can.
That's great advice. Well, Stephen, I totally appreciate this. I've enjoyed it, and I'm going to let you attend to your awesome kids.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything.